The rain drummed against the kitchen window of their modest suburban home in Denver, Colorado, as Sarah Mitchell carefully poured melted wax into a mason jar. The vanilla and lavender scent filled the air, mingling with the aroma of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. It was 11:47 p.m., and while her husband Mark slept soundly upstairs, she was lost in her own little world of creativity and possibility. Just one more, she whispered to herself, the same phrase she'd been repeating for the past 3 hours. Her hands moved with practiced precision, having perfected this ritual over the past 6 months. What had started as a simple stress relief activity after particularly brutal days at her accounting firm had evolved into something much more meaningful. Sarah had always been the practical one in their relationship, while Mark, a mid-level manager at a telecommunications company, dreamed big but rarely followed through. She was the one who balanced their checkbook, planned their vacations, and made sure their 2 kids, Emma and Jake, had everything they needed. But these candles, these beautiful, perfectly scented creations, represented something different. They were hers. The next morning, as golden sunlight streamed through their breakfast nook, Sarah couldn't contain her excitement any longer. Emma, their 8-year-old, was meticulously arranging her cereal by color, while 6-year-old Jake was more interested in building a fort with his toast than eating it. Mark sat across from her, scrolling through his phone while mechanically spooning coffee into his mouth. "Mark," Sarah began, her voice carrying an unusual tremor of anticipation. "I want to talk to you about something important." He glanced up briefly, his attention still partially captured by whatever was on his screen. What's up, babe?" Sarah took a deep breath, her heart racing with the same intensity she'd felt before presenting major financial reports to board members. "I've been thinking about starting a business. A candle business." The words hung in the air for a moment before Mark's face broke into a wide grin. Not the supportive, encouraging smile she'd hoped for, but something that made her stomach drop. He actually chuckled, a sound that would replay in her mind for months to come. "A candle business?" He set down his phone, giving her his full attention for the first time in weeks. "Sarah, honey, that's really cute. I mean, your little hobby candles are nice and all, but a business? Come on." The word hobby hit her like a physical blow. "It's not just a hobby, Mark. I've been researching the market, looking at profit margins, studying successful brands." Babe, hold up." Mark raised his hands in a gesture that felt more dismissive than calming. "Look, I love that you're being creative and all, but let's be realistic here. How many candle companies are there already? Yankee Candle, Bath and Body Works, these are massive corporations. You think you can compete with that from our kitchen?" Emma looked up from her cereal, her young eyes darting between her parents with the intuitive awareness that children possess when tension fills a room. "Mommy, are you going to make candles for everyone?" "Maybe, sweetheart," Sarah managed, forcing a smile for her daughter while feeling Mark's doubt seep into her confidence like water into dry soil. Mark reached across the table and patted her hand in a way that felt more patronizing than affectionate. "Sarah, you're brilliant with numbers, you've got a steady job with great benefits, and we've got a good thing going here. Why rock the boat with some pipe dream that'll probably cost us money we don't have to lose?" "But what if it doesn't lose money? What if it makes money?" Sarah's voice grew stronger, fueled by a frustration she hadn't known was building. "What if it makes a lot of money?" Mark's laugh was louder this time, causing Jake to look up from his toast fort. "Honey, I know you. You're a dreamer sometimes, but you're also practical. Think about it logically, the startup costs, the time, the marketing, finding customers. And for what? Candles? Something people can buy at any grocery store for $5. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "My candles aren't grocery store candles, Mark. They're hand-poured, made with premium soy wax, unique scent combinations, and I'm sure they're wonderful," Mark interrupted, checking his watch. "But wonderful doesn't pay for Emma's dance classes. Or Jake's soccer league. Your accounting job does that. This candle thing, it's a nice way to unwind, but let's not confuse relaxation with a business plan. The conversation ended there, not with a resolution, but with Mark gathering his things for work and planting a quick kiss on Sarah's cheek. I've got to run. The Henderson account is breathing down my neck again. We'll talk more about this later. Okay? But Sarah knew they wouldn't talk more about it. In Mark's mind, the conversation was over. The idea had been categorized, filed away under cute but impractical, and dismissed. As his car pulled out of the driveway, she sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the lingering scent of vanilla and lavender from the night before, and made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't ask for permission again. That evening, after the kids were in bed and Mark was absorbed in a basketball game, Sarah opened her laptop at the kitchen table. The same table where her dreams had been left at just hours before now became her headquarters. She started researching everything: LLC formation, product liability insurance, suppliers, online marketplace requirements, social media marketing strategies. Her accounting background proved invaluable as she created detailed spreadsheets projecting costs, profit margins, and break-even points. She researched successful small businesses, studied their social media presence, analyzed their pricing strategies. What Mark had dismissed as a whim, Sarah approached with the same methodical precision she brought to corporate financial analysis. Over the next 3 weeks, she quietly established Serenity Sense LLC using money from her personal savings account. She designed a simple but elegant logo, set up social media accounts, and created a basic website using a template platform. Every spare moment was invested in her vision, during lunch breaks, after the kids went to bed, early mornings. Before anyone else was awake, the first real test came when she decided to try selling at the local farmers market. The night before her debut, she stayed up until 2 a.m., carefully arranging 30 candles in elegant displays, pricing each one at $28, significantly higher than Mark's referenced $5 grocery store candles, but competitive with premium brands. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, perfect farmers market weather. Sarah loaded her Honda Pilot with folding tables, tablecloths, candle displays, and a cash box, her heart pounding with nervous energy. Mark was still asleep when she left a note explaining where she'd gone. The Aurora Farmers Market was bustling with early morning shoppers seeking fresh produce, artisanal goods, and locally made products. Sarah's booth, positioned between an organic honey vendor and a pottery maker, felt both perfectly at home and completely foreign. As she arranged her candles for the third time, adjusting labels and straightening displays, doubt crept in. What if Mark was right? What if this was just an expensive hobby? Her first customer was Margaret, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes who approached the booth with genuine curiosity. "Oh my, these are beautiful. Did you make all of these yourself?" "Yes, ma'am. Every one is hand-poured with premium soy wax and custom scent blends." Sarah's voice was steady despite her racing pulse. Margaret picked up a candle labeled Morning Coffee and Cream, unscrewed the lid, and inhaled deeply. Her face lit up with delight. "This smells exactly like my kitchen on Sunday mornings." "How much is it?" $28. Without hesitation, Margaret reached for her wallet. "I'll take 2 of these and, what's this one?" She picked up another candle. "That's autumn leaves and vanilla. It's one of my favorites." "Make it 3 candles then." As Sarah processed her first sale, $1.84 in less than 5 minutes, a small crowd began gathering around her booth. Word spread quickly in the close-knit farmers market community about the new candle lady with the amazing scents. By noon, she had sold 26 of her 30 candles and had taken orders for 12 more. The drive home was surreal. Sarah kept glancing at the empty boxes in her back seat, then at the envelope containing $728 in cash, more money than she made in 2 days at her accounting job. Her phone buzzed with notifications from her new Instagram account as customers began posting photos of their purchases. Mark was in the garage when she arrived, tinkering with his workbench, a weekend ritual that never seemed to result in any completed projects. "Hey, how was your little candle thing?" he asked without looking up. "I sold 26 candles," Sarah said quietly. Now Mark looked up, a condescending smile playing at his lips. 26? That's great, honey. How much did you make, like $50? Sarah pulled the envelope from her purse and set it on his workbench. $728. In 4 hours. The smile faded from Mark's face as he picked up the envelope, flipping through the bills. His expression shifted from disbelief to confusion to something Sarah couldn't quite identify. This is from selling candles? And I have 12 more orders to fill for next weekend." Sarah felt a surge of vindication but kept her voice level. "I'll need to buy more supplies." Mark set down the money, his brow furrowed. "Sarah, this is just one good day. You can't build a business on one good day." But even as he said it, Sarah could see the doubt in his own words. The evidence was sitting right there. On his workbench, more tangible than any argument he could make. For the first time since she'd shared her dream, Mark looked genuinely uncertain about his dismissal. That night, as Sarah prepared her next batch of candles, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the intoxicating rush of potential. Every pour, every scent combination, every label she applied was an investment in a future she was creating one candle at a time. Mark might not believe in her vision yet, but the $728 in sales and the growing list of customer requests suggested that plenty of other people did. She glanced at her phone, which showed 17 new Instagram followers and 4 direct messages from people asking about custom orders. The farmers market had been just the beginning, a proof of concept that validated what she'd known all along: this wasn't a hobby. This was her calling. As the vanilla and lavender scent filled the kitchen once again, Sarah smiled to herself. Mark had laughed at her business idea, but the market, the most honest judge of all, was laughing with her, all the way to the bank. 3 months after her farmers market triumph, Sarah had established a rhythm that would have impressed any efficiency expert. She woke at 5 a.m., spent an hour responding to customer messages and updating her social media accounts, then got the kids ready for school while mentally calculating the day's production schedule. After dropping Emma and Jake off, she'd put in her 8 hours at Morrison & Associates accounting, then race home to begin her real work. The kitchen had been transformed into a surprisingly sophisticated operation. The island now housed a double boiler system for melting wax, a dedicated area for wick preparation, and a cooling station with industrial-grade shelving Mark had reluctantly helped her install. The pantry had been reorganized to accommodate bulk supplies, 50-pound blocks of soy wax, gallon containers of fragrance oils, and boxes of glass containers in various sizes. Serenity Scents was no longer just Sarah's dream, it was becoming her second full-time job. Her Instagram following had grown to 2,400 engaged followers, her website averaged 15 orders per day, and she was now selling at 3 different farmers markets across the Denver metro area. The spare bedroom had been converted into shipping central, with a label printer, packaging supplies, and neat stacks of completed orders waiting for pickup. Mark watched this transformation with a mixture of bewilderment and growing concern. What he'd expected to fizzle out after a few weeks had instead intensified. Their conversations at dinner increasingly revolved around scent profiles, customer feedback, and production challenges. Sarah spoke about her business with the passion he remembered from their early dating days when she'd talk about her dreams of starting her own accounting firm. "The lavender and bergamot blend is becoming my signature scent," Sarah explained to Emma and Jake over Wednesday night dinner. Mrs. Patterson ordered 6 of them for her book club, and now 3 of her friends want to place orders. "That's nice, honey," Mark replied automatically, his attention divided between Sarah's business update and an email from his boss about yet another corporate restructuring. His own job at Mountain View Telecommunications had become increasingly stressful as the company downsized and consolidated departments. He was now doing the work of 2 people for the same salary, with constant pressure to increase sales numbers. That seemed impossible to reach. "Mark, are you listening?" Sarah's voice cut through his mental fog. Of course, lavender, bergamot. Mrs. Patterson, he recited back, earning an eye roll from Emma, who at 8 years old had already mastered the art of detecting when adults weren't paying attention. I was saying that I need to make a decision about the wholesale inquiry from Rocky Mountain Gift Shop. They want to carry 6 of my scents in all 12 of their locations. This got Mark's attention. Wholesale? What does that mean? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him a professional email chain. They want to place an initial order of 144 candles, 12 of each scent, for all their stores. It would be my biggest order yet, but I'd have to lower my price point and probably rent commercial kitchen space to meet their production requirements and insurance standards. Mark scrolled through the emails, his expression growing more serious with each message. The numbers were significant, not life-changing money, but not hobby money either. How would you handle production? You're already staying up until midnight every night making the orders you have now. I've been researching commercial kitchen rentals. There's a shared space in Lakewood that caters to small food and cosmetic businesses. It's $35 an hour, but it has all the equipment I'd need to scale up production efficiently. And you'd quit your day job? Mark's question carried an edge of panic. Not yet, Sarah assured him. I'd use vacation days and weekends to fulfill the wholesale orders, then see how it goes. If it leads to more wholesale accounts, then maybe, eventually. The word eventually hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. Mark could see where this was heading, and it terrified him. His steady, predictable wife, the one who double-checked their insurance policies annually and maintained color-coded filing systems, was talking about leaving her stable job to pursue what still felt like an impossible dream, but he couldn't argue with the results. Their joint checking account showed regular deposits from Serenity Scents LLC, deposits that had grown from a few $100s to over $2,000 the previous month. Sarah had already paid back her initial investment and was reinvesting profits into inventory and equipment. 2 weeks later, Sarah signed the wholesale agreement with Rocky Mountain Gift Shop. The contract required delivery of 144 candles within 30 days, along with professional product photography, liability insurance documentation, and ingredients lists formatted to retail standards. She took 3 vacation days and spent them at the Lakewood Commercial Kitchen, a bustling space shared by food truck operators, small bakeries, and craft beverage makers. The energy was infectious, entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs, sharing advice, and celebrating each other's victories. Sarah felt more at home in that rented kitchen space than she had in her corporate cubicle in years. The wholesale order was delivered 2 days early, each candle individually wrapped and labeled with professional tags that Sarah had designed and printed herself. Rocky Mountain Gift Shop's buyer, Jennifer Walsh, was impressed enough to place a second order before the first had even hit the shelves. Your products are flying off our shelves, Jennifer told Sarah during a phone call that felt like a career-defining moment. We've never had a candle vendor with this kind of turnover rate. Our customers love the unique scents and the quality is exceptional. I'd like to discuss expanding our partnership. Sarah was at her day job when she took this call, sitting in the break room during lunch, trying to contain her excitement while surrounded by coworkers discussing weekend plans and office gossip. The contrast was stark. Here she was, receiving news that could change her life, while pretending to care about quarterly budget reviews and compliance regulations. That evening, she shared the news with Mark over a dinner of takeout Chinese food, the kids already upstairs doing homework. Jennifer wants to add 4 more scent varieties and increase the order quantity to 200 candles per month. She's also connected me with 2 other gift shop chains that might be interested. Mark set down his chopsticks, his face a mixture of pride and concern. Sarah, this is incredible. I mean, really incredible. But I have to ask, when are you sleeping? You're at the accounting firm all day, then you're making candles until midnight, up at 5 answering emails, weekends at farmers markets or the commercial kitchen. This pace isn't sustainable. Sarah had been dreading this conversation, but she'd also been preparing for it. You're right. Something has to give. The business is growing faster than I can handle with my current schedule. So you scale back the business, Mark said, relief evident in his voice. Or I scale back the day job. The words created an immediate tension in the room. Mark's relief evaporated, replaced by the familiar look of concern that had become his default expression whenever Sarah's business came up. Sarah, your day job provides our health insurance. It's steady income, a guaranteed paycheck. This candle business, it's doing well now, but what happens when the novelty wears off? What happens if there's a recession and people stop buying luxury items? What happens if a big competitor decides to copy your scents? Sarah had anticipated every one of these concerns because she'd asked herself the same questions. My business income last month was $3,200. That's more than half my accounting salary. If I went part-time at Morrison & Associates, I could maintain our insurance benefits while having enough time to properly grow Serenity Scents. We could actually end up making more money, not less. Mark stood up and began pacing their small dining room, a habit that emerged whenever he felt overwhelmed. But it's risky, Sarah. Really risky. What we have now works. We pay our bills, we're saving for the kids' college funds, we take a nice vacation every year. Why gamble all of that? On candles? The word gamble stung because Sarah knew her decision was anything but gambling. She had spreadsheets projecting 18 months of growth scenarios. She had testimonials from satisfied customers, reorders from wholesale accounts, and a waiting list of potential stockists. She had turned her cute hobby into a profitable business that was outgrowing her ability to manage it as a side hustle. It's not gambling when you have data, Mark. It's called calculated risk, and it's what every successful entrepreneur has to take at some point. But you're not an entrepreneur, Sarah. You're an accountant. You're good at it, you're successful at it, and it provides for our family. Sarah felt something crack inside her chest, not quite breaking, but definitely fracturing. I'm not just an accountant, Mark. I never was just an accountant. That was never my dream, it was just safe. Practical. Expected. Mark stopped pacing and looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time in years. What are you saying? I'm saying that for the first time in my adult life, I'm doing something that feels like me. Not the safe version of me, not the practical version, not the version that does what's expected, the real me. And that version of me is building something incredible. The conversation continued for another hour, circling around the same fundamental disagreement. Mark saw Sarah's business success as fortunate but unsustainable, a nice supplement to their real income but not a replacement for financial security. Sarah saw her business as proof that she was capable of creating something from nothing, of building a future limited only by her own ambition and dedication. They went to bed that night with the issue unresolved, but Sarah's mind was made up. The next morning, she requested a meeting with her supervisor at Morrison & Associates to discuss transitioning to part-time status. Mark never knew about that meeting. He never knew about the detailed business plan Sarah had prepared, the financial projections that showed sustainable growth, or the backup plans she'd developed for various scenarios. He never knew because he never asked. In his mind, the conversation was still theoretical, something they were discussing rather than something Sarah was actively planning, but Sarah was done asking for permission. She was done explaining why her dreams deserved to be taken seriously. She was done trying to convince someone to believe in her when she already believed in herself. 3 days later, Morrison & Associates approved her request to transition to part-time status, effective in 2 weeks. Her new schedule would give her mornings free for business operations while maintaining afternoon coverage for her accounting clients. She would keep her health insurance benefits and maintain a steady, if reduced, salary. That evening, Sarah made Mark's favorite dinner, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and waited until after the kids were in bed to share her news. She'd rehearsed the conversation multiple times, anticipating his concerns and preparing responses based on facts rather than emotions. I have something to tell you, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Mark looked up from his laptop, where he'd been reviewing sales reports for his own job. What's up? I spoke with Richard at Morrison and Associates about going part-time. They approved it, and I start the new schedule in 2 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark closed his laptop slowly, his expression cycling through surprise, concern, and something that looked like betrayal. You spoke with them? Without talking to me first? Sarah had known this moment would be difficult, but she'd also known it was necessary. Mark, we've been talking about this for weeks. You've made your position clear, you think it's too risky. I've made my position clear, I think it's the right next step. At some point, talking becomes stalling. This affects our entire family. Sarah. Our income, our insurance, our financial stability. These aren't decisions you make unilaterally. I'm not leaving my job, Mark. I'm reducing my hours to create time for the business that's already bringing in significant income. We'll keep our benefits, and based on my projections, our total household income will actually increase within 6 months. Mark stood up, his frustration evident in every movement. Your projections assume that this candle fizzle keeps growing at the same rate indefinitely. What if it doesn't? What if people get bored with your scents? What if the economy tanks and luxury items are the first thing people cut from their budgets? Then I go back to full-time accounting, Sarah replied calmly. But what if the business keeps growing? What if I could double our income? What if I could create something that provides more security than any corporate job ever could? They argued for another hour, covering the same ground they'd been covering for months. But this time, Sarah wasn't seeking Mark's permission or approval. She was informing him of a decision she'd already made. The conversation ended with Mark sleeping in the guest room and Sarah lying awake in their bed, wondering when she'd stopped recognizing her own husband. 2 weeks later, Sarah began her new schedule. Mornings were devoted to Serenity Scents, production, customer service, marketing, and business development. Afternoons were spent at Morrison and Associates, handling the accounting work that still paid their bills but no longer defined her identity. The change was immediate and dramatic. With dedicated morning hours, Sarah could respond to customer inquiries promptly, fulfill orders efficiently, and actually focus on growing the business rather than just maintaining it. Her Instagram following jumped to 5,000 in the first month. Website orders doubled. She signed 2 additional wholesale accounts. Mark watched these developments with conflicted emotions. He was proud of Sarah's success but terrified of what that success might mean for their future. The safe, predictable life they'd built together was being replaced by something exciting but uncertain, and he wasn't sure he was ready for that kind of change. What Mark didn't realize was that change was no longer optional. Sarah had tasted the intoxicating flavor of building something from nothing, of having her efforts directly correlate with her results, of being limited only by her own vision and determination. There was no going back to being just an accountant. The woman who had once asked for his permission to start a candle business was gone, replaced by an entrepreneur who was building something extraordinary. Whether Mark chose to support that transformation or continue fighting it would determine not just the fate of Serenity Scents, but the future of their marriage. 8 months after going part-time, Sarah was fielding calls from retailers across 3 states. What had started as a kitchen hobby was rapidly evolving into a regional brand, and the demand was outpacing her ability to supply it. She'd outgrown the shared commercial kitchen in Lakewood and was seriously considering leasing her own production facility. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning in October, when her phone rang while she was calculating inventory needs for the upcoming holiday season. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the area code was New York. Good morning, Serenity Scents, this is Sarah. Ms. Mitchell? This is David Chen from Bergman and Associates. We're a retail consulting firm based in Manhattan, and we represent several major home goods chains. I've been following your brand's growth through industry connections, and I'd like to discuss a significant opportunity. Sarah's heart rate immediately accelerated. She'd heard of Bergman and Associates. They were the consultants who helped small brands break into major retail chains like Williams-Sonoma, Anthropologie, and Pottery Barn. "I'm listening," she managed, trying to keep her voice professional despite the excitement building in her chest. "One of our clients, Homestyle Living, is looking to expand their candle offerings with unique, premium brands. They have 847 stores nationwide and are particularly interested in products with authentic origin stories and exceptional quality. Your brand has been recommended by several of their regional buyers." Sarah sat down heavily in her kitchen chair, the same chair where Mark had laughed at her business idea less than a year ago. What would something like that involve? Initially, they'd want to test your products in 50 stores across 5 markets. If the test performs well, and based on what I've seen of your customer engagement and reorder rates, I'm confident it will, they'd roll out to their full chain. We're talking about an initial order of approximately 5,000 units, with potential for 50,000 units annually if the partnership succeeds. The numbers were staggering. Sarah's biggest single order to date had been 500 candles for a regional gift shop chain. 5,000 units would require her to completely transform her operation, and 50,000 units annually would make Serenity Scents $1 million business. "What's the timeline for this opportunity?" Sarah asked, her mind already racing through the logistics. Homestyle wants to have new products on shelves for their spring refresh in March. That gives us about 5 months to finalize everything: product specifications, packaging requirements, pricing structures, and production capacity verification. After hanging up, Sarah sat in her kitchen for 10 minutes, staring at the notepad filled with numbers and requirements. This was the opportunity she'd dreamed about but hadn't dared to believe was possible. It was also terrifying in its implications. She would need to lease a proper production facility, hire employees, invest in commercial-grade equipment, and completely professionalize her operation. The startup costs would be substantial, and there would be no room for error. She would also need to leave her accounting job entirely. There was no way to manage a national retail partnership while maintaining even part-time employment elsewhere. That evening, Sarah waited until after dinner and homework were finished before approaching Mark. He was in his home office, reviewing quarterly sales reports that painted an increasingly grim picture of his own career prospects. Mountain View Telecommunications was struggling, and rumors of additional layoffs were constant. "Mark, I need to talk to you about something important." He looked up from his laptop, and Sarah could see the stress lines around his eyes that had deepened over the past few months. His job insecurity had made him even more resistant to any changes in their financial stability. "What's going on?" Sarah took a deep breath and launched into the details of her conversation with David Chin. She explained the opportunity, the potential revenue, and the requirements for making it happen. Mark listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. "So let me understand this," he said when she finished. "You want to quit your job entirely, lease a commercial facility, hire employees, and bet everything on one retail contract?" "It's not betting everything, Mark. It's scaling a successful business to meet market demand. I have 18 months of financial data showing consistent growth. I have existing wholesale accounts that are reordering regularly. This isn't a gamble, it's the natural next step." Mark stood up and began his familiar pacing routine. "Sarah, this is exactly what I've been worried about. The business starts doing well, and suddenly you want to risk everything to chase some fantasy of becoming the next big thing." "Fantasy?" Sarah's voice carried an edge that made Mark stop pacing. "Is $8,000 in monthly revenue a fantasy? Are contracts with 12 retail locations a fantasy? Is a consultation call from one of the top retail consulting firms in the country a fantasy? You're talking about leaving your job, our guaranteed income and benefits, to chase a contract that might not even work out. What if Homestyle changes their mind? What if your products don't sell in their stores? What if there's a recession and people stop buying luxury candles?" Sarah had spent the afternoon anticipating these exact concerns and researching responses to each one. The contract includes guaranteed minimum orders regardless of sales performance for the first year. I've researched Homestyle's track record with new vendors. They have a 78% success rate with brands that meet their initial performance metrics, and my customer engagement numbers exceed their benchmarks. But you'd be competing with established brands with massive marketing budgets and national recognition. Mark, I'm already competing with those brands. At farmers markets, in gift shops, online, I'm competing with them every day, and I'm winning. Customers choose my candles over Yankee Candle, over Bath and Body Works, over brands with million-dollar advertising campaigns, because my products are better. Mark sat back down, rubbing his temples. The startup costs alone, leasing a facility, buying equipment, hiring people. Where would that money come from? Sarah pulled out a folder she'd prepared, containing detailed financial projections, equipment quotes, and facility options. The Homestyle contract includes a $50,000 advance upon signing. I've identified a 2,400 square foot facility in Commerce City that's perfect for our needs, available for $3,200 per month. Equipment costs would be approximately $35,000 for commercial-grade melters, cooling systems, and packaging equipment. I'd need to hire 3 part-time employees initially. Mark flipped through the documents, his accounting-trained wife's thoroughness evident in every spreadsheet and projection. Despite himself, he was impressed by the level of planning and research she'd done. And if it doesn't work out? Then I have experience running a manufacturing operation, managing employees, and working with major retailers. Those are skills that would make me highly employable in any number of industries. Sarah paused, then added quietly, "But it's going to work out, Mark." "I know it is." Mark looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. The uncertain woman who had nervously shared her candlemaking hobby had been replaced by someone who spoke with the confidence of proven success. Her projections weren't wishful thinking, they were based on 18 months of consistent growth and increasing demand. "You've already made up your mind, haven't you?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "I called David Chen back this afternoon and told him I'm interested in moving forward. I'm meeting with Homestyle's buyers next week in Chicago. Without discussing it with me first. Mark, I love you, but I can't keep asking for permission to succeed. This opportunity won't wait for you to feel comfortable with it. If I don't take it, they'll find another candle maker who will." The argument that followed was their biggest yet, touching on everything from financial responsibility to respect within their marriage. But underneath Mark's concerns, Sarah could hear something new, not just fear of her failure, but fear of her success. Fear that she was outgrowing the life they'd built together, outgrowing the version of herself that had fit comfortably into his vision of their future. The meeting in Chicago went better than Sarah had dared to hope. Homestyle's buyers loved her products, her brand story, and her professionalism. They signed a contract for an initial order of 6,000 candles across 8 scent varieties, with delivery scheduled for February 15, just 4 months away. The advance payment of $50,000 hit Sarah's business account 3 days later, making the opportunity undeniably real. She gave her 2 weeks' notice at Morrison & Associates, signed a lease for the Commerce City facility, and placed orders for equipment that would transform her from a small-scale artisan into a legitimate manufacturer. Mark watched these developments with a mixture of awe and terror. His wife was moving at a speed that left him breathless, making decisions that would have taken him months to contemplate. She'd gone from asking his permission to start a hobby business to building an operation that would generate more revenue than both of their previous salaries combined. 2 weeks after signing the Homestyle contract, Sarah's new facility was operational. The space was a dramatic upgrade from her kitchen setup, dedicated areas for wax melting, pouring, cooling, packaging, and shipping, along with a small office space and employee break room. She'd hired 3 part-time employees, Maria, a recent college graduate with marketing experience, Tom, a retiree looking for part-time work, and Jessica, a stay-at-home mom whose children were in school. The first production run for Homestyle was scheduled to begin in January, giving Sarah 2 months to perfect her processes, train her employees, and ensure quality control standards that would meet national retail expectations. Every candle would need to be identical, every label perfectly aligned, every package meeting Homestyle's exacting specifications. As Sarah stood in her new facility, watching her employees prepare for the biggest order in Serenity since history, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with anticipation. This was no longer her kitchen hobby or even her part-time business, this was her company, her vision made manifest in concrete and steel. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah worked 16-hour days, perfecting production processes, coordinating with suppliers, and ensuring every detail met Homestyle's requirements. She created detailed training manuals for her employees, established quality control checkpoints, and implemented inventory management systems that would have impressed her former accounting colleagues. Mark, meanwhile, was dealing with his own career crisis. Mountain View Telecommunications announced another round of layoffs, and his department was being restructured for the third time in 2 years. His boss, Richard Hawkins, called him into a conference room on a gray December morning with the kind of serious expression that immediately communicated bad news. "Mark, I'll get straight to the point. The company is eliminating your position effective January 15th. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay and continuation of benefits for 60 days. The words hit Mark like a physical blow. He'd been with Mountain View for 8 years, had consistently met his sales targets, and had never received anything but positive performance reviews. Is there anything else available? Maybe a transfer to another department? Richard shook his head sympathetically. I wish there was. We're cutting 30% of our sales force across all divisions. The telecommunications industry is consolidating. And we're fighting for survival. I'm sorry, Mark. I really am. Mark drove home in a daze, his mind reeling with the implications. They had some savings, but their monthly expenses assumed 2 steady incomes. Emma's dance classes, Jake's soccer league, their mortgage, car payments, everything was budgeted based on financial stability that had just evaporated. He found Sarah in the facility, wearing safety goggles and carefully monitoring a large vat of melting wax. She looked up when he entered, immediately noticing his expression. Mark? What's wrong? I got laid off. My last day is January 15th. Sarah removed her safety equipment and walked over to him, her expression shifting from concern to determination. Okay. We'll figure this out. How much severance are they giving you? 2 weeks' pay and 60 days of benefits. Sarah nodded, her mind already working through the financial implications. That gives us time to make a plan. Have you updated your resume recently? Mark looked around the bustling facility, his wife's employees working efficiently, pallets of supplies stacked neatly, the air filled with the scent of success, and felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sarah, I need to ask you something. Of course. Would there be a place for me here? In your business? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither had fully considered. Sarah studied her husband's face, seeing vulnerability she hadn't witnessed since the early days of their marriage. What would you want to do? Mark gestured around the facility. I don't know. Whatever you need. Sales, maybe? Customer service? I've got 8 years of experience managing client relationships. Sarah felt her heart rate increase, but not from excitement, from careful consideration of a decision that could either strengthen their marriage or destroy it. Working together would solve their immediate financial crisis, but it would also fundamentally change their relationship dynamic. Mark, if you worked here, you'd be working for me. I'd be your boss. Are you prepared for that? The question forced Mark to confront the reality he'd been avoiding for months. His wife had built something extraordinary while he'd been clinging to the security of a job that had ultimately proven to be not secure at all. She was the successful entrepreneur, he was the unemployed middle manager. "I think I have to be," he said quietly. "And you'd have to take direction from me, follow my vision for the company, support decisions even when you might disagree with them." Mark nodded slowly. "I understand." Sarah walked to her office area and pulled out a legal pad, the same methodical approach she used for all business decisions. "Let me think about this overnight. We need to make sure we're both clear about what we're agreeing to." That evening, after the kids were in bed, Sarah and Mark had the most honest conversation they'd had in years. They talked about the changing dynamics of their relationship, the financial pressures they were facing, and what it would mean for Mark to work in the business he'd initially dismissed. "I owe you an apology," Mark said, his voice barely above a whisper. "When you first told me about the candle business, I thought I was being practical. Looking back, I realize I was being condescending and unsupportive." Sarah reached across the kitchen table and took his hand. "You were scared. I understand that. Change is frightening, especially when you can't control it." "I still am scared," Mark admitted. "But now I'm more scared of not being part of what you're building than I am of the risks involved." 3 days later, Sarah offered Mark a position as Sales and Customer Relations Manager for Serenity Scents. His starting salary would be $45,000 annually, less than he'd made at Mountain View, but with the potential for bonuses based on company performance. More importantly, he'd be working for a growing company with unlimited potential rather than a struggling corporation fighting for survival. Mark's first day at Serenity Scents was January 20th, 5 days after his layoff from Mountain View became official. Sarah introduced him to Maria, Tom, and Jessica as the company's new sales manager, and if any of them found it awkward that the boss's husband was joining the team, they kept it to themselves. The homestyle order was due in 3 weeks, and every aspect of production needed to be perfect. Mark threw himself into learning the business with the same intensity Sarah had shown when building it. He studied product specifications, memorized scent profiles, and learned the intricacies of retail partnerships. His telecommunications sales experience proved valuable in unexpected ways. He understood the importance of customer relationships, the art of managing expectations, and the discipline required to meet deadlines. Within a week, he was suggesting improvements to their customer service processes and identifying opportunities to upsell existing wholesale accounts. "You know," Sarah said during their second week of working together, "you're actually good at this." Mark looked up from a spreadsheet he was creating to track customer reorder patterns. "I'm surprised too. I thought I'd be terrible at selling candles." "You're not selling candles, Mark. You're selling experiences, memories, emotions. That's what I learned when I started. People don't buy candles, they buy the feeling of coming home to something beautiful." The realization was profound for Mark. For months, he'd seen Sarah's business as frivolous, a luxury item that people could easily live without. Now he understood that she was selling something much more fundamental, the human desire to create comfort, beauty, and ritual in daily life. The homestyle order shipped on February 12, 3 days ahead of schedule. Every candle met specifications. Every package was perfectly labeled, and every aspect of the delivery exceeded expectations. David Chen called personally to congratulate Sarah on the professionalism of her operation. "Homestyle is extremely impressed," he told her. "Initial sell-through numbers are exceeding projections by 40%. They want to discuss expanding the test to additional markets and increasing the order quantities for the fall refresh." Sarah hung up the phone and looked around her facility. Mark was on a call with a potential new wholesale account, using sales techniques he'd perfected over 8 years in telecommunications. Maria was updating their social media accounts, showcasing behind-the-scenes content that made customers feel connected to the brand. Tom and Jessica were efficiently packaging orders for their online customers, maintaining the quality standards that had built Serenity Scents' reputation. This was her team, her company, her vision transformed into reality. But for the first time since she'd started the business, she wasn't doing it alone. Mark had gone from skeptic to supporter to essential team member, bringing skills and perspective that made the company stronger. That evening, they drove home together for the first time since Mark's layoff, both exhausted but energized by the day's successes. Emma and Jake were waiting with homework questions and stories about their school day, the normal rhythm of family life that had somehow survived the dramatic changes in their parents' professional lives. "Mom, Tyler's mom wants to know where she can buy your candles," Emma announced over dinner. "She said the one you gave her for Christmas smells amazing." Sarah smiled, pulling out her phone to add another potential customer to her growing list. "Tell her to check our website, or she can visit us at the Cherry Creek Farmers Market on Saturday." "Are you going to be there, Dad?" Jake asked Mark. Mark looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, I'll be there. I'm part of the team now." As they cleaned up after dinner, Mark reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. The woman who had nervously asked for his opinion about starting a hobby business was now his boss, running a company that employed 4 people and generated more revenue than his previous corporate job. The kitchen where he'd laughed at her huge idea was now the place where they planned strategies for national expansion. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was personal. Sarah had discovered a confidence and capability she'd never known she possessed. Mark had learned to let go of controlling a future he couldn't predict and instead contribute to building one they could create together. Later that night, as Sarah updated her business projections to reflect the potential homestyle expansion, Mark brought her a cup of tea, the same evening ritual they'd maintained throughout their marriage, but now it felt different. He wasn't just being supportive of her hobby, he was contributing to their shared enterprise. "You know what's funny?" Mark said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "What's that?" "A year ago, I thought you were crazy for wanting to start a candle business. Now I can't imagine doing anything else." Sarah looked up from her laptop, seeing her husband in a new light. The man who had laughed at her dreams was now integral to making them come true. The skeptic had become a believer, not through blind faith, but through witnessing firsthand what was possible when talent met opportunity and determination. "Mark, I need to tell you something." He set down his tea, giving her his full attention. "Having you as part of the team, it's made everything better. Not just because we needed the help, but because you bring perspective and skills I didn't have. We're building something stronger together than I ever could have alone." Mark reached across the desk and took her hand, the same gesture of connection they'd shared thousands of times throughout their marriage, but with new meaning. "Sarah, you built this. You had the vision, you took the risks, you made it happen. I'm just grateful you're letting me be part of it. We're partners, Mark. In everything. Always have been, even when we didn't realize it." As they prepared for bed that night, both of them felt the satisfaction of a day well lived and a future full of possibilities. The business that had started as Sarah's individual dream had evolved into something that strengthened their marriage, provided for their family, and created opportunities neither of them had imagined possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: scaling production, managing growth, balancing family and business responsibilities. But tonight, they were content to be partners in every sense of the word, building something beautiful one candle at a time. 18 months after Homestyle's initial order, Serenity Scents occupied a 12,000 square foot facility in Denver's River North Art District, employed 23 people, and generated annual revenue of $2.8 million. Sarah had been featured on the cover of Colorado Business Magazine as Entrepreneur of the Year and was scheduled to speak at the National Candle Association's annual conference in Las Vegas. The company's growth had been extraordinary but not without challenges. Managing inventory for 2,400 retail locations required sophisticated forecasting systems. Maintaining quality control across multiple production lines demanded constant attention to detail. Balancing the creative aspects of scent development with the operational demands of a manufacturing business tested Sarah's leadership skills daily. Mark had evolved from reluctant employee to indispensable business partner. His title was now Vice President of Sales and Operations, and his compensation included profit sharing that made him one of the highest paid sales executives in Colorado's home goods industry. More importantly, he'd discovered a passion for business development that he'd never experienced in his telecommunications career. "We need to talk about the Nordstrom opportunity," Mark said, walking into Sarah's office on a busy Thursday morning in March. Sarah was reviewing production schedules while simultaneously approving social media content and responding to investor inquiry emails. Nordstrom's home goods buyers had approached Serenity Scents about carrying their products in 57 stores across the West Coast, representing a potential $500,000 annual contract. The opportunity was exciting but would require another significant expansion of their production capacity. "What are your thoughts?" Sarah asked, gesturing for Mark to sit down. "The numbers work, but barely. We'd need to add another production line, hire 6 more employees, and probably lease additional warehouse space. The margins are thinner than our other retail partnerships because Nordstrom's pricing requirements are more aggressive." Sarah nodded, appreciating Mark's thorough analysis. Over the past year, he'd developed an intuitive understanding of their business model that complemented her creative vision with operational pragmatism. "But," Mark continued, "Nordstrom would give us presence in markets we haven't penetrated yet: Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles. The brand recognition value alone might justify the thinner margins." This was the kind of strategic discussion that energized Sarah. Building Serenity Scents had taught her that success wasn't just about making great products, it was about making smart decisions about which opportunities to pursue and which to decline. Set up a meeting with their buyers, Sarah decided. "Let's see if we can negotiate better terms or find creative ways to improve the margins. Maybe exclusive scents or seasonal collections that command higher prices." Mark made notes on his tablet, then looked up with the expression Sarah had learned to recognize as his difficult conversation face. "There's something else we need to discuss. I've been approached by a headhunter about a VP of sales position with a major cosmetics company. Based in Chicago, $180,000 base salary plus bonuses, full relocation package." Sarah felt her stomach drop, but she kept her expression neutral. "Are you interested?" 6 months ago, I would have been. It's more money than I'm making here, it's with an established company, and it would be a significant career advancement in traditional terms. But Mark smiled, the expression that had made Sarah fall in love with him 15 years earlier. "But I can't imagine leaving what we're building here. This isn't just a job for me anymore, Sarah. It's our company, our vision, our future." Relief flooded through Sarah, but she forced herself to consider the offer objectively. "Mark, you shouldn't stay just because we're married. If this opportunity is better for your career, it's not," Mark interrupted. "Better paying, yes. Better for my career? No way. In 5 years, Serenity Scents is going to be a national brand. In 10 years, we might be looking at acquisition offers from major corporations. I'd be crazy to leave now." Sarah reached across her desk and squeezed his hand. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The conversation was interrupted by Maria, who knocked on the office door with barely contained excitement. "Sarah, Mark, you need to see this. We just got a call from QVC. They want to feature Serenity Scents on their show next month." QVC represented a quantum leap in exposure and potential sales volume. A successful appearance could generate orders for 10,000 candles in a single day. Sarah and Mark looked at each other, both recognizing the magnitude of the opportunity. "Schedule a conference call with their buyers," Sarah told Maria. "And start researching other brands that have appeared on QVC. I want to understand exactly what we're getting into." After Maria left, Sarah leaned back in her chair and laughed, not from humor, but from the surreal nature of her reality. 3 years ago, she'd been melting wax in her kitchen and dreaming of selling candles at the farmer's market. Now she was considering television appearances and national distribution deals. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of the early days?" she asked Mark. "Sometimes," he admitted. But I don't miss the uncertainty. Or the financial stress. Or wondering whether we were making the right decisions. Sarah nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Success had brought complexity, but it had also brought security, opportunity, and the satisfaction of building something meaningful. That evening, they attended Emma's school play together, sitting in the auditorium among other parents and feeling the normal rhythms of family life that had somehow survived the dramatic expansion of their business. Emma played a tree in the environmental awareness production, delivering her 3 lines with the confidence of a natural performer. She gets that from you, Mark whispered to Sarah as Emma took her bow. The confidence or the drama? Both. After the play, they went to dinner at the kids' favorite restaurant, a family-owned Italian place that had become their traditional celebration spot. Emma and Jake chattered about school, friends, and weekend plans while Sarah and Mark listened. With the contentment of parents whose children felt secure and loved despite the chaos of building a business. "Mom, are you famous now?" Jake asked between bites of spaghetti. Sarah laughed. "Not famous, sweetheart. Just successful." "What's the difference?" Mark answered before Sarah could respond. "Famous means people know who you are. Successful means you're doing something that matters." Emma looked thoughtful. "So Mom is successful because her candles make people happy?" "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "And because we're able to provide good jobs for our employees and take care of our family." The conversation drifted to other topics, but Sarah reflected on the simple wisdom of her children's questions. Fame had never been her goal, creating something meaningful had been. The recognition that came with success was gratifying, but the real satisfaction came from building a company that employed people, served customers, and generated the resources to provide for her family's future. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in QVC's studios in Westchester, Pennsylvania, preparing for her first television appearance. The show's host, Jennifer Walsh, had coached her through the format during rehearsal, emphasizing the importance of storytelling and emotional connection with viewers. "Remember, you're not just selling candles," Jennifer had advised. "You're selling the story of a woman who believed in her dream and built something extraordinary." QVC viewers love that narrative. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that her success was now partly defined by the very story Mark had initially ridiculed. The cute hobby he'd dismissed had become a compelling entrepreneurial journey that resonated with audiences nationwide. The show went better than Sarah had dared to hope. She told her story naturally, demonstrated her products with genuine enthusiasm, and connected with viewers in a way that felt authentic rather than sleazy. Orders began flowing in within minutes of going on air. Mark watched from the green room, his pride evident as he saw his wife confidently representing the company they'd built together. When the segment ended, the show's producer informed them that they'd sold 3,200 candles in 18 minutes, a QVC record for a debut appearance by a home goods brand. "We'd like to schedule you for a monthly appearance," Jennifer told Sarah. "After the show, your on-camera presence is natural, and viewers clearly connected with your story. This could be a significant revenue stream for Serenity Scents." Flying back to Denver that evening, Sarah and Mark reviewed the day's results. The QVC appearance had generated $89,600 in sales, introduced their brand to a national audience, and opened the door to regular television opportunities. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Sarah said as their plane descended toward Denver International Airport. "What's that?" "That morning in our kitchen when I first told you about wanting to start a candle business. Do you remember what you said?" Mark winced slightly. "I said it was cute but wouldn't pay the bills." "And now?" Mark looked out the airplane window at the lights of Denver spreading below them. "Now I know that the biggest mistake I ever made was underestimating my wife." Sarah reached over and took his hand. "You came around. Eventually. But you never needed me to believe in your vision for it to succeed. You just needed me to stop standing in the way." The honesty of the moment created a comfortable silence between them as the plane touched down. They'd both changed significantly over the past 3 years. Sarah had discovered capabilities she'd never known she possessed, while Mark had learned to support dreams he couldn't initially understand. A year later, Serenity Scents was acquired by Lifestyle Brands International for $15.2 million, with Sarah remaining as CEO and Mark as president of operations. The acquisition provided the capital and infrastructure to expand nationally while maintaining the artisanal quality and personal touch that had built their customer base. Emma, now 11, kept a framed photo on her bedroom dresser of the family at the acquisition signing ceremony. Jake, 9, told his friends that his mom was the boss of a whole company. Both children had grown up watching their parents build something from nothing, learning lessons about persistence, partnership, and the rewards of hard work. Sarah's office in Serenity Scents' new corporate headquarters overlooked the Rocky Mountains, a daily reminder of how far she'd traveled from her kitchen table beginnings. The walls displayed her various awards and recognitions, but the item that meant the most to her was a simple mason jar candle, the very first one she'd made, carefully preserved as a reminder of where it all started. Mark's office was next door, connected by a door that stayed open most of the time. Their professional partnership had strengthened their marriage in ways neither had anticipated. Working together had taught them to communicate more effectively, to leverage each other's strengths, and to support each other through challenges and victories. On quiet evenings, when the corporate responsibilities were set aside and they were simply husband and wife again, they often talked about the journey that had transformed their lives. Mark had gone from skeptic to partner to co-leader of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Sarah had evolved from uncertain dreamer to confident CEO. "Do you have any regrets?" Sarah asked one evening as they shared a bottle of wine on their back patio, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Mark considered the question seriously. "I regret not believing in you sooner. I regret making you feel like you needed my permission to pursue your dreams. But I don't regret the journey we've taken together." Sarah smiled, remembering the woman who had nervously poured wax by candlelight while her family slept. "I regret doubting myself for so long. But I don't regret the struggle. It made the success more meaningful." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had learned that the strongest partnerships aren't built on avoiding challenges, but on facing them together. Their story had become one of transformation, not just of a business idea into a successful company, but of a marriage that grew stronger through supporting each other's growth. The candle business that Mark had left had become the foundation of their family's security, the source of meaningful work for dozens of employees, and proof that with persistence, vision, and partnership, extraordinary things were possible. Sarah Mitchell, who had once asked permission to start a hobby, now employed the man who had initially dismissed her dreams. The woman who had melted wax in her kitchen had built a nationally recognized brand. The wife who had been underestimated had become the boss, the CEO, and the architect of a success story that proved that sometimes the most powerful transformations begin with a single person willing to believe in possibilities that others can't. Yet in the end, Mark hadn't just learned to work for his wife, he'd learned to work with her, creating something neither could have achieved alone. And Sarah had discovered that the most satisfying success isn't just proving doubters wrong, but turning them into believers, partners, and champions of the very dreams they once questioned. The scent of vanilla and lavender still filled their home most evenings, but now it carried with it the sweet fragrance of dreams realized, partnerships strengthened, and a future built one carefully crafted candle at a time.